Assalamualaikum and good day. Today, my team and I will be presenting our research on online learning performance of boarding school students during COVID-19 pandemic from a teacher's perspective. So, before proceeding any further, I would like to introduce the members in my team. The first one is Mohamad Haziq, second is me, myself, Mohamad Aiman, the third one is Mohamad Aidid, the fourth one is Hairul Nizam, and the last one is Mohamad Hilman. So, our presentation is divided to several parts. As you can see, the table of contents, these are the few topics that will be touched during our presentation. Now, let us get into the first part of the presentation, which is the introduction. This introduction part will set the direction for this whole presentation, whereby I will be explaining and giving the general overview about this research. As we know, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted a lot of sectors all over the world, and one of the impacted sector is education sector. Education sector has actually been severely impacted ever since the lockdown has been implemented in Malaysia. As a consequence of that matter, students actually are being put in a situation whereby they need to adapt to a new system in which everything have been shifted to a virtual mode. However, we need to also understand that the level of coping is different when a comparison is being made between normal school students, boarding school students, and higher institution. Therefore, this research will mainly talk about the challenges and also struggles that was being faced by boarding school students throughout this online learning. The areas that will be touched are overall performance, classwork submission, and also participation of boarding school students. Hence, we decided to gather all those data from teachers' perspective, as they would be the one that have a better view on the areas that have been mentioned just now.
Prior to this research, we studied two articles to understand on how students perform and also what affects their performance during online learning in this pandemic. So the first, we found that teachers' capability in conveying what they want to teach may affect students' performance. And the next one is the lack of awareness in using technology may heavily impact on how students perform. If it's used properly, if it's utilized, it may give many benefits. On the other hand, if it's not utilized correctly, it will be an obstacle to an effective online learning. And last but not least, the method on how the course is conveyed or present plays an important role in how students perform.
For the problem statement for this research, it was being identified that there's actually a significant change to the learning environment of the boarding school students. Based on the problem that has been mentioned, the factors that was being discussed was there might be less interactions between teachers and boarding school students during the online learning. With that being said, this actually affects the study performance of the students, and in order for us to verify that, a thorough observation was being conducted on the current development of boarding school students' performance from a teacher's perspective. The term development of boarding school students' performance here will be divided into several parts, and they will be explained in detail on the next part.
Thank you to Aiman. Now, research question. We utilize why, how, and what. What are the significant changes in social interaction and accessibility to the teaching and learning of boarding school students? How are the participation, classwork submission, and grade performance of boarding school students during online learning? And how do the changes in the teaching and learning environment affect the performance of boarding school students? One of the objectives of the study is to identify the significant changes in social interaction and accessibility to the teaching and learning of boarding school students, to study the participation, classwork submission, and grade performance of the boarding school students during online learning. And last but not least is to understand the relationship between the changes in the environment to the performance of boarding school students. Hypothesis number 1. The social interaction between the students is shrinking and the accessibility to the teaching and learning of boarding school students is limited. Hypothesis number 2. The participation, classwork submission, and grade performance of the boarding school students during online learning are at a poor level. Hypothesis number 3. The shrinking of the social interaction between the students and the limited accessibility leads to poor students' performance. And now, the purpose of this study is to identify the significant changes in social interaction and accessibility to the teaching and learning of boarding school students. Data collection from the stakeholders through survey form is crucial for the betterment of online learning as a whole. We expect that by conducting this research, we will be able to gather enough evidence to encourage responsible authorities to bring changes towards a better learning environment.
In finding and discussion, firstly, I will be presenting the demographics. So, first we collect the stats of the respondents. So we have respondents from total of 9 states in Malaysia. And mostly our respondent came from Kedah, which is 25 respondent, and Terengganu, 21 respondent. Next, we also collect the gender of our respondents. So we have male with 21 respondent and then female with 44 respondent. Next, in this pie chart is portraying the age distribution of our respondents. So mostly our respondent age is ranging from 21 to 30 years old, which is 23 respondent, and the oldest one is ranging from 51 to 60 years old with 17 respondent. The last part in demographic is the type of boarding school. So our respondent, which is the teachers, majority came from the full boarding school and only one came from semi-boarding school.
For the first research objective, the first question is asked about how was the overall social interaction among students before COVID-19. According to the figure, the majority of the respondents believe that the social interaction among students before COVID-19 is very good. This indicates that the boarding school students have a very close relationship before the arrival of the pandemic. The second question, on the other hand, is asking about the social interaction during online learning. Based on the figure, it shows that the overall social interaction between the students during online learning is reducing in comparison to before the pandemic. This is because the students are now learning from home and are not able to interact with their peers as they would in a regular classroom setting. The next question attempts to dig further about the accessibility of the students in joining the online learning class. According to the figure, it demonstrates that the majority of the boarding school students have convenient access to online classes. This is mainly because of the supportive action from the parents to provide adequate facilities for the students in facing online learning. For the second research objective, the first question is about the rate participation of the student during online learning. The participation or attendance of the students during online classes is at a satisfying condition. This can be related to the possibility that online classes in boarding school follow a schedule that suits the needs and condition for online learning at home. The next question is about the rate of classwork submission. The classwork submission of the students during online learning is at a good extent. This is possibly because of the attitude of the boarding school student that have a good discipline and time management skills in order to complete and submit the classwork given on time. For the test or exam performance, the figure demonstrates that the test and exam performance of the boarding school students during online learning is at a satisfying condition. This is possibly because the teachers are able to efficiently deliver their content to the students. Lastly, the figure shows that the overall performance of the boarding school student is still at a good extent. The findings obtained in this section contradict the hypothesis. This is primarily due to the teacher's ability to adapt and shift to a situation where everything is visual. They are able to change their teaching style and put in extra effort to ensure that the students understand the learning materials.
The first question in research objective number 3 is to ask if online learning environment giving a good impact on the student performance. So majority of the respondents is answering yes. Next, this question is asked among the respondent with yes response. So here this question asks about the factor that contribute to the better performance of the students. So as you can see in the figure, the most voted factors is the supportive parent, proper teaching method, and also conducive learning environment. So this question is asked to know how other factors impacting the boarding school students' overall performance. So some of the response here we can see that proper teaching method can ensure the students still able to cope with the studies even the environment has changed a lot. And also by having an adaptive class and curriculum will allow the students not to be bored during class. And then a conducive learning environment will impact their interest and emotion during online learning. And lastly, having a supportive parents can become a good motivation for the students and then increase their spirits in studying. In this question, we ask what are the main obstacles faced by the student during online learning to the respondent with no response. So majority of the teachers said that students are facing limited internet accessibility and also they are unmotivated students during online learning. So other problem that they face during online learning is also limitation of number of device and family issue. Lastly, this question is asked to know how other obstacles is affecting the boarding school student performance. So some of the response is that limited internet accessibility can disrupt their participation in class and also limit their response and direct interaction with the teacher. So next, with the limitation of number of devices, the student can't put the maximum commitment on the class lessons, and also student mental health are also affected during online learning if having family issues, and also unmotivated students always neglecting their classwork and homework, causing poor examination results that could lead to expulsion. Moving on to the last part, which is the conclusion. So what we can conclude from the research objective 1 is that the social interaction between the student is the shrinking during online learning as compared to before the pandemic. And also the accessibility of the boarding school student to the teaching and learning is convenient and commendable. Next, for research objective 2, we can conclude that the performance of the boarding school student are at all aspects are at a satisfying condition. And lastly, we can conclude from the research objective 3 is that students have sufficient accessibility and good interaction between teachers and students during online learning.